Hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of HC Magazine's People You Should Know. Joining me today via telephone is Mr. Kelly Rippel from Kansans for Hemp. He is an activist, speaker, and an organizer. So let's get right to it and hear what's going on with Mr. Kelly Rippel today. Hi, Kelly. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Hey, man. Thanks for being on today. So let's hear a little bit about you before we kind of jump into what you're working on right now. How did you get into hemp in the first place?
Yeah, so the way that I got involved with cannabis and hemp is that when I was younger, my father told me about some research that he was involved with in Kansas. And take a step back first. So when I was in middle school, we had DARE class and we heard about, marijuana and the dangers of it. I went home and asked him what he knew about it. And this is when he told me about this research he was involved with. So it turns out as a student at Kansas State University, which is the nation's first land grant school, he was getting a biology degree and they studied eradication methods of hemp. And that kind of stuck with me. And as a generation that we were being told, we were going to come up with renewable energy and sources and save the world from fossil fuels, it didn't seem right being in Kansas that we were trying to kill something that we knew grew well. So because there's obviously naturally occurring cannabis everywhere here. So that kind of stuck with me over time. I did a lot of research trying to find out humanity's relationship and history with the plant. And so that led me to multiple conferences, and it's led me to travels around the world, like many are fortunate in this space to experience. And what that's led me to, are some pretty, I guess, unique opportunities in changing laws within Kansas and moving things forward. So, that's it. It all goes back to data for me. Science is how I got involved with this.
So I want to back up for just a quick second because I feel like we just kind of washed right over this. Was your dad working specifically on how to eradicate hemp?
Unfortunately, yeah. So he was a student. Right. He was a student volunteer, and he was just working, to get his degree. Well, there were some grad students there who, as I found out later, were funded by the pharmaceutical conglomerate Eli Lilly. And so they funded these eradication studies as well as other, and I'm happy to go into detail, but basically I discovered these full texts. I had some inside help within the Hale Library on the K-State campus. They found the original publications that are not open access documents that anyone can find on the internet.
Ooh, I would love to see those.
So absolutely. They're out there. I'll share. Feel free, anyone can reach out to me. But my goal with this is to try to allow our institutions and decision makers policy really to understand that Kansas has some of the earlier history, the scientific research about it, although it was biased and it was laden with conflicts of interest. This is very important to know the information, their conclusions. It explains a lot why Kansas is one of the last states to legalize at all anything to do with cannabis. And, so there's a lot of things that, we need to be able to talk about because, science is not an open and closed issue. It's an ongoing thing. And so I just want people to be able to have access to this and evaluate it for themselves.
Sure. So I have to ask this question to see if I don't know if you know the details on this, but what were some of the methods they were looking at to eradicate hemp? Just curiously.
Yeah. So, and this is kind of where I remember my dad telling me that what they did was they strapped on tanks on the racks of 2,4-D and just sprayed it.
Okay.
The entire field. And so, and they know now that they really tried to phase that out, because it's been linked to, multiple health issues and reproductive concerns. But, and luckily my dad's still alive. He's doing great. Right. But he also said they burned entire plots. So what they did was all the farmers in Riley County, which is predominantly agriculture, as most of the state is, they sectioned off certain areas of farms that had hemp growing on it, and they studied different types. So yeah, they use fire. They use different types of insecticides or pesticides, killers. They just a number of things.
Wow. It's kind of crazy. It's always, I mean, it's fun on my end to hear these stories of like how people have come about to be in this industry, and that's kind of the point of this entire podcast really, is like, how did you get into this? What brought you in? And so often I hear varying stories of somehow somebody was connected to prohibition either directly or indirectly in some way, shape, or form, and the recognition of the insanity of it or just the injustice of it has kind of spurned people to come into this. But wow,
it's so true.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that it is not, prohibition was not based on science, and we can prove this now. And so what I've discovered through these publications is that our institutions knew at that time that what was naturally occurring in Kansas was not, quote unquote, the drug type.
Right.
They claimed this was marijuana that they were going after, and it absolutely wasn't, because these observations that they documented proved what was growing here was in fact the fiber type. Right. So there's just a lot of conflicts, but even the titles themselves. I mean, one of them was called "Seasonal Fluctuations on Cannabinoid Content of Kansas Marijuana," and that was published in 1975.
Wow. So that was my next question: is what was the year this was taking place?
So it was over a span of years, actually. And if I'm not mistaken, I think some of them did start in the late 60s, but my dad was involved in the 70s as a student. They were published in 1970, 1973, and 1975.
Okay, got it. Right in the middle of the Controlled Substances Act and Nixon and pushing that.
Exactly.
Yep. And so, and I don't want to delve too far into this. I wanted to hear more about you, but I mean, this is a fascinating turn in the conversation. And yeah, so what's amazing is another one that you kind of talked about, and I don't want us to not notice that you made that statement, is this was a drug company that funded this eradication. And
this is true.
And this is in the 60s and 70s. And it's not hard to make a quick leap to go, well, why would a massive drug company like Eli Lilly want to fund eradication of hemp? I mean, why would you do such a thing if it had no medicinal benefit and if it wasn't going to challenge, whatever products you were putting out in the market? I mean, that's kind of, so they knew that at that time already that it was something that was going to potentially be a competitor for them. Is what my assumption is.
On multiple levels,
sure.
on definitely on multiple levels, because we're talking, the chemical side of things, but also the medical side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, So this was what I believe, and others have told me believe that this is pretty a groundbreaking discovery.
Right.
And what I'm trying to get folks to also recognize is that this is likely not an isolated incident.
Yeah.
There are probably other research, and this, I want people to look in their own states, their own universities, to really try to gather as much information, because I don't think this was just a one-off thing. This had to have been going on all over.
Sure. How successful was the eradication? This is my last question on this, because I want to delve into more. But I mean, really, how successful was this program? Did the hemp keep coming back? Did it show itself to be pretty hardy even within those harsh situations?
Yeah, that is true. They're concluding, and actually, I remember my dad joking when I was younger that he said one of their conclusions was that it always came back, and that's kind of why it stuck with me, because I was like, wait, they're killing something that goes back? I don't understand. And so they used all different kinds of methods. However, what's growing here right now, it has gone through generations of natural selection, and it's so rigorous, it's so hardy. Genetics here are undoubtedly going to be sought after in the future, if not right now.
So let's talk a little bit about your journey in the cannabis arena. Was it always hemp, or did you focus on marijuana as well?
Right. No. I've always in my research and travels and stuff. I've definitely picked up on the fact that this is this is an important plant all around. And I very much continued to do reviews and research into the medical aspects of it. I've received a master's certificate from the Cannabis Training University, and there's just a lot that. And so yes, the short answer is yes. I've been involved with the industrial side of hemp, as well as educating and advocating in Kansas about the medical aspects of cannabis. So I'm an advisor to the coalition Bleeding Kansas Advocates, who's been working for the past almost 10 years to get a medical program through the legislature. And, I have a pretty large network, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of all of this.
Excellent. So what is it looking like in Kansas right now? I think it's one of those states that it's the dead center of our country, and people kind of tend to forget, what's going on there. And so where are we in Kansas?
That is such a great question, and it's almost like what's the matter with Kansas? Well, there are a lot of issues over time that we know politically, things like gerrymandering and prohibitionist views. We've got heavy law enforcement influence, as well as pharmaceutical and alcohol lobby. I mean, there have been a lot of dare I say corrupt sort of goings on in the legislature for years. I mean, this is nothing new, but those special interests have really guided the decision making on leadership for like allowing things like a hearing on a bill or whatever, allowing things to be introduced. So we've just gotten a lot of pushback, and it really, in my observation, it comes down to education. Because these medicals, it always does, and that's what this is about, but the bottom line is, and this will continue to happen, but we've got to educate medical professionals, because there is in particular one who lives in my hometown of Topeka. He's actually connected with Sam, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Yeah.
Nothing smart about them.
He's been right, ridiculous approach to marijuana. He's been the lead speaker on every testimony that has to do with anything related to drugs or cannabis or anything like that in the legislature, and they all listen to him. Now, I'm not saying that he isn't smart, that he doesn't understand a lot of issues, and I also am not saying that he doesn't have points as far as public health concerns, because the bottom line is that, cannabis a panacea? We don't know. Not for everyone, because there's so many variables. But we got to do research. We got to find things out. And he's just been such a staunch prohibitionist throughout all of this time that he's undermined a lot of progress, I would say.
Yeah.
So, those kinds of things.
We've had issues in Colorado with Sam. I mean, they've done, they've been known to have some of the most ridiculous campaigns over the last, 10 plus years since I've been in the cannabis industry. Just to give you one example, during Halloween, they tried to create this scare that people were going to put edibles into kids' bags because they would think that was a fun time, which people were like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because first of all, nobody's going to have an unopened container of candy for their kids. I mean, but also, you know how expensive that would be?
Yeah, exactly. Why?
They're trying to create fear. They had one where they had a billboard, and you'll love this. They showed all these gummies, but they were gummies outside of packaging and just up on a billboard, like it was like 4 gummies. And they said, "Hey, can you tell which one has cannabis in it?" And we were like, wow. So we did one on our own in one issue of our magazine, the local issue here. And we had 2 glasses of water. And we said, "Hey, Sam, can you tell which one has vodka in it?" Because it was like you're taking it out of its container. You have no idea what it is, and they're trying to create these scare tactics where it's like if you just walked into a dispensary, you'd recognize, I know what this is, I know what that is, and as soon as that person buys it, it's up to the parent, just like it would be for alcohol. And people seem to forget that alcohol does not have child-proof containers on it.
No.
I mean, any kid can open up a bottle of vodka and drink it if they were so inclined. Whereas, I mean, God, some adults have trouble opening some of the packaging for cannabis. It's one of those ridiculous things there. So to kind of come back to you on that, though, as I digress, you've been traveling the world speaking about hemp. You were recently in Slovenia. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct.
And what was that experience like? I mean, do they have a much more enlightened view of hemp, I would assume?
It's fascinating. So they did, like several years ago in the early 2000s, and things have changed over time, and it kind of has to do with a regime change over there. So their leadership is also very conservative, and they are anti-cannabis all the way, and so they've seen a lot of shops and enterprise go down over there, and there's more stigma attached to it still, and so they've got it. So it was very fascinating to go over there, and because I was expecting this was just going to be, that was the World Hemp Congress and the capital Ljubljana of Slovenia, and I was expecting to just see things everywhere, and I was going to learn so much, and I did. I learned so much from so many people from different countries, and at the same time, it was like I realized that we are all fighting similar things in different countries. You can go across the pond and it's really not that different. And I don't know, it was interesting. But part of my journey over there was to connect with folks about what has happened, to share the research that I uncovered in 2017, and really try to get on the same level as far as how policies can be made across different countries. And it was very fascinating.
Well, I'd like to hear more about the feedback on that. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Mr. Kelly Rippel from Kansans for Hemp. Want to be a true hempster? Visit us at hcmagazine.com and subscribe to our weekly news updates, or download our app for Android or iOS mobile devices. Now, get hemp with style wherever you are. Okay, so we're back with Mr. Kelly Rippel, and we were just talking about your visit to the World Congress Expo in Ljubljana, Slovenia. And, I wanted to ask you kind of a further question on that. Did you find anything that was really encouraging or discouraging about what's going on in the hemp industry in Europe, specifically Slovenia or any of the other countries that were represented there?
Yes, so both. There was a lot of encouraging and a few things that were discouraging. Mm-hmm. The most discouraging was, like I had mentioned, that they had kind of gone backwards, at least socially, on acceptance of hemp and all of that. They have a lot of work to do, and as well as legislation and their policy. But I talked with someone named Martini Meinreich from Germany. He's one of the sole leaders who helped legalization happen in Germany, and he was saying that as far as cannabis goes, there it's covered by their insurance. And about 90% of their population is covered through like socialized medicine, what we would consider that. And they cover cannabis as medicine.
In Germany.
However, their policy does not allow them to grow it there. So they import all of it, and it's costing insurers millions of dollars a month. And
okay, so when you're speaking about cannabis, I'm sorry, mm-hmm. I just want to be. Are you speaking about they're covering marijuana or they're covering?
Correct.
Okay, so
yeah. But going back,
go ahead.
Well, going back to hemp though, some of the really encouraging things, and so overall, I would say the most encouraging things deal with hemp specifically, because the medicinal side of cannabis has a little ways to go to deal with stigma still in a lot of countries. But the research that was being done, even in Slovenia, I spoke with and someone presented from the university there in Ljubljana about research that they recently concluded, and they were doing some incredible things. They were extracting nanoparticles from hemp fibers so that they can create batteries and solar panels, and just testing tensile strengths of different varieties. I mean, there were a lot of really impressive things that are happening in a lot of countries around there, including Australia, and Israel was represented as well.
Did you find any countries that were like the leaders, or was each country kind of focusing on a different, swim lane, so to speak?
It would depend on who you ask. But there's been some amazing research done in Australia and in Slovenia. Israel is obviously one of the leading researchers of at least medicinal aspects of cannabis and cannabinoid therapies. Italy, Morocco, they have some really great things happening, and as well as in Germany and Norway and some others. And I don't know. There's a lot of opportunity, obviously, with all of this, and there are leaders, absolutely, but Romania, China, Korea, Canada, those being the leading producers of hemp, they have a lot as well. So,
is there an excitement about what's happening here in the United States as far as the movement, or is it trepidation? Are they kind of worried that we may come in on their territory and take over? I mean, as far as farming goes, I think it's a given that if we choose to, we could pretty much eclipse everybody if we really wanted to. We have a lot. We have a lot of land that we can farm hemp on if we chose to.
We do, and that's a very complex issue and concept. So, I mean, that in itself could be an entire show.
Yeah.
What I will say is that it depends on who you ask. Now, people in Kansas, if you're talking to a farmer who doesn't believe that, basically farmers grow what the market dictates. They grow. And a corn farmer out in western Kansas that, a lot of farmers tell me we should have never even introduced corn in Kansas because it's so water intensive.
Sure.
But if you've got a farmer out there who's made a living on growing thousands of acres of corn, that's what he's going to grow because that's what the market dictates.
Well, and they're subsidized too, aren't they, to some extent?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But the 2018 Farm Bill is going to shift a lot of it's a major shift because farmers are now going to be eligible for crop protection, crop insurance. They may end up getting subsidies. People can get grants right now for research. So, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to. However, all that being said, I do know that countries like China are having difficulties with the amount of arable, farmable land because of things like contamination from manufacturing and industrial use. So they are, in fact, looking for places like the U.S. and others to be able to engage in trade because they have a demand just like we do, but they can't necessarily grow it. So there are a lot of nuances that I think they'll come to light because of the 2018 Farm Bill. Things have been opened up and somewhat protected. Hopefully the Banking Act will go through. But yeah, it is definitely an opportunity. And I think overall people are really excited about it. There's clearly trepidation with banking institutions and all that, but the industry is moving forward, and I'm just so thrilled to be alive at this time to see it all happen.
It's exciting. I'll probably say this many times on this show or other shows we've done. I have a lot of people like, God, we wish that it had never had prohibition. Imagine where we'd be now with hemp. And I was like, well, then Monsanto would probably own it. And it's like, and now we kind of have our eyes wide open to what could happen in the agricultural industry, and nobody's gotten a chance to have a foothold in the hemp industry in the United States. So it's almost a godsend. I'm a silver lining guy. I look at it like that. It's like, well, maybe it's a good thing in the long run that we have had prohibition on hemp because we haven't effed it up yet.
Wow, that is a fascinating take, and I've not heard that yet, but I can't say that I completely disagree.
Right.
So,
we now have farmers.
We are here for a reason.
Yeah, we have an opportunity to defend this plant before it becomes a huge industry and taken over by companies that are considered the evil companies of the world that might want to mess it up and and hold all the power of it. So that's kind of one of those things I like to look at. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm a silver lining kind of guy, but are you able to take some of the stuff you've learned at places like the World Hemp Congress and your travels around and bring that information back to Kansas and kind of open some eyes there as to what's possible for the farmers there? Are they starting to? Oh yeah. You seeing cracks in the walls out there?
Absolutely. And, there's all kinds of information on the internet. People here do their research if they want to. Good. And so a lot of public opinion is shifting here in Kansas anyway, but to have a research publication that says, hey, these varieties have this tensile strength, and therefore if you want this end product, you should be growing this. I mean, that's huge. That's a big deal. So yeah, I mean, people are absolutely excited about any type of information that's being shared,
Sure.
and that's really for me. This is a community. I mean, a lot of folks say that this is cannabis and hemp. It's all industry. It's big money is out to get it. But really this is a community, and
It is.
It just like small farmers across the state. They're needing something to diversify their commodities because of things like the tariff and flooding and all of this. They've got to have another way to earn income for their families.
Are the farmers there looking to are they looking to jump on the CBD bandwagon, or are they more? I mean, you've talked a lot about tensile strength, and you haven't talked about CBD at all, which is actually kind of refreshing. And I'm not a hater of CBD in any way, shape, or form, but we've been covering hemp and hemp connoisseur for 9 years almost now, and CBD was not even in our purview when we started this,
right?
And so,
well,
I'm just curious: is it a bandwagon out there as well as like it is in a lot of other communities that are starting to do farming?
Yeah. So starting out, and I'm just so excited that I can give updates on how many acres. So right now, Kansas is approved to grow over 3,700 acres first year out the gate.
Fantastic.
And Kentucky, for example, was already growing in its third year before they were growing that much. A lot of the farmers, a lot of the applications that we've approved, and I'm an appointed member of the advisory board to the Department of Ag, so I've helped approve a lot of licenses, and a lot of them do have CBD varieties in them. That's why they're growing it. That's where the money is right now.
Sure.
And of course, if you've been in the industry a while, you would know that there's a plateau coming. There's just so much biomass on the market right now.
Absolutely.
And there will be still a demand, but I don't think it's going to be quite as much. Of course, they're, with FDA having their hearing recently, that it's going to change things once they create this pipeline for hemp and cannabis-derived products to go through. But there are a lot of misconceptions, obviously, about CBD, and there's a lot. This could be an entire show in itself too, but from my understanding, my viewpoint, CBD became mainstream and huge because places like Colorado didn't have plant limits. People flocked to places like Colorado, and they grew as many plants as they want.
Sure.
And it just completely saturated the industry, and it was the next hot thing. I'm not saying that it isn't important, that we need to increase CBD in our diets overall. This is true, but it then became this thing. Well, people are using CBD to make the medical aspects of cannabis more palatable, and it also at the same time demonized THC, which didn't really need that.
No,
it already was demonized, So it's like there's a lot of mixed feelings about it, and I'm not dogging on anyone involved with it either, because I have a lot of friends and connections that are, but overall, I will say, genetically speaking, what is growing naturally in Kansas, it's fiber type.
Sure.
And when you're talking about cross pollination and all that, I've seen a lot of grows get cross pollinated, and we're always going to have that. That's what's here. That's what's naturally occurring. You're not going to, it will always degrade as far as cannabinoid level. So I think in the long term, Kansas is going to be known for a lot of fiber, textile, biocomposite, a lot of the other end products, not things like CBD.
Well, and I'm excited to hear that, honestly, Kelly, because again, nothing against CBD. I think CBD is opening the doors for more understanding of hemp. It's absolutely a wonderful thing that's happening there. I think it accelerated more farmers wanting to jump in. It's obviously easier to take a CBD product to market than it is to take a hemp textile to market. We need way more infrastructure to do textiles and construction materials, and to create batteries out of it, and graphene. I mean, I get all those things. So, but it is really encouraging to hear that the farmers are still going to be looking at it as a fiber, because in the long term, that's where it's going to be coming from, is that fiber. That stalk is the real gold of the hemp plant. I kind of laugh because I'm always like, what are they going to put CBD in today? It's always like something new. And I agree. It needs to be in your body. It's something that, we should be taking every day, as if it's a vitamin or a nutritional supplement. It's important to have in there. It absolutely is, but not at the expense of THC.
So we're all cannabinoids.
We're all cannabinoids. It's exactly right. We created, so it's incredibly important. But I'm really excited to hear that they are looking at the fiber, and obviously because it is a cultivar that naturally occurs as an indigenous cultivar in Kansas. It's exciting to hear that you guys are working on what you're doing. So what's next before we leave? What's next for you in Kansans for hemp? Like, what's your biggest focus right now? Like, is there something that's like you're on the precipice of?
So multiple things. We've got a lot of growing that's happening right now. Mm-hmm. Folks are planting. We're going to have a tour of the state. We're going to have some documentary film come out from that, hopefully. There's just a lot of things happening. I'm also the president of the Trade Association, Planted Association of Kansas, and we've got some exciting things happening. We're going to have more events. We're going to have a Kansas Hemp Symposium. We had the first one in February. We will have another one, hopefully in the near future. Okay. So, there's just a lot of things happening. We've approved over 20 processing plants throughout the state. So we're going to see a lot of infrastructure being built, converted, because, like I said, the supply chain has to be reinvigorated, rebuilt. So, a lot of things happening. But Kansans for Hemp is the consulting arm. If anyone ever wants to reach out to us, we're on Facebook, Kansans for Hemp with the number 4. We're on Twitter. Mm-hmm. So, anyone, if anyone is wondering or wanting to get into the industry in Kansas, or if you are elsewhere, feel free to reach out. We can connect you with folks. So.
Fantastic, Kelly. Well, thank you so much for your time. If it's okay with you, we'd love to check back with you on the Hemp Connoisseur show to find out what's going on with Kansans for Hemp and how Kansas is doing. Well, Kelly Rippel, thank you so much for joining us again. You can check him out at Kansans for Hemp. That's the number 4, Kansas for Hemp. And what a great time to have you on there, man. I really appreciate all the work you do, Kelly. So thank you so much for all your efforts.
Well, I appreciate it. Keep it up yourself.
Will do, buddy. Will do. All right, guys, another great show. HC Magazine's People You Should Know. We want to thank Kelly Rippel. We want to thank our sponsors. And please check us out at hcmagazine.com. Or if you haven't already done it, download our app on the Apple Store or on Android. Until next time, everybody, peace, love, and happiness.